So this student, he was a social activist and was involved in such things as the anti-war movement and various civil rights types of things. But nevertheless, he considered himself to be an agnostic and was prevalent in the day. He was a consumer of the green leafy substance, and after a while he started selling it. And he was having a rather prosperous business. But something was troubling him. And for a year or so, he kept having this recurring dream that he was being chased by 3 men that were absolutely after him and were going to do him harm. But they never quite caught him. He would just wake up right before. And he had that same dream. And then one night, he had that dream, and they caught him. They caught him, they pulled him down, and one of them put a knife in his heart. And that was in his dream, that was just absolutely excruciating for him. And then a wave of peace fell over him. And he wasn't sure what to make of it because he was an agnostic. He didn't believe in God. But this was something that was truly overwhelming for him. And finally he decided that he wanted to call it love beauty, because that was his experience of it, love and beauty. And he realized that from that time on, that he wanted to dedicate his life in service to this presence that he named love beauty. Well, there was a little problem there because he got busted. And of all things, he had very rarely kept his stash in his home, but this time he did, and so he got busted big time. Not only possession with the intent to sell, this is not good. And he was looking at jail time. He couldn't, I can't go to jail. I've got a new mission. I don't get it. Well, his lawyer came to him just in glee because they had found a technicality in his arrest, good old LAPD. And so they found this technicality and he got off. His case was dismissed. But before he left the courtroom, the judge looked at him and he said, "Young man, you've been given quite a break today. And I hope that I never see you in my courtroom again." And the young man turned to the judge and said, "You never will." And from that point forward, this young man embarked upon an intense study of spirituality. Eastern spirituality, Western spirituality. He dove in with both feet. And ultimately became and is a preeminent leader in our movement. He used to be affiliated with United Centers for Spiritual Living, and his vision was so powerful that he split off into his own teachings, followings. Anyway, the person I'm talking about is Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. He got an idea. He was inspired by something greater than he was, and he knew that he had to follow it. The theme for this month, for our global vision, is the power of the mind. And those of you who have studied religious science for any period of time, in fact, metaphysical teachings in general, even Buddhism, the Buddha said, everything is mind. And of course, one of the slogans for religious science back in the day was change your thinking, change your life. One of the basic teachings that Ernest Holmes said time and time again is that our minds are very powerful. Our thoughts are things. Our thinking has a direct impact on our experience of life. And we'll be talking about that this month. So today, we're going to talk about a personal experience of the divine. And all spiritual journeys need to start with some sort of a realization that there is something greater than you are, that I am. And then once we realize that, our lives are never the same. We are inspired to make different choices. We are inspired to show up differently. We are inspired to learn and study and expand our experience of life. Now, what the Global Vision themes are doing this year are taking statements from the Declaration of Principles and the Global Vision and matching them up. And it's wonderful to see how they follow a certain pattern, even though the Declaration of Principles was written in the late 1920s and the Global Vision was written after the turn of this century, 80-some years later. So the statement we're working from today is from the Declaration of Principles, and it's, we believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. One of the first steps on any spiritual journey is the recognition that there is something greater than we are. Some people have a little bit of a struggle with the word God, as did Michael Beckwith in the day. And so he called it love beauty. And a lot of different names are given. And it doesn't matter, because what we are talking about is the same thing. We're talking about a power for good in the universe greater than we are, that is always available to us. Now, sometimes when we think about an experience of the divine, we think of something really grandiose. The Bible is full of stories of conversion. Moses and the burning bush and the booming voice. Well, that got his attention. And he said, "So who are you?" And the voice said, "I am that I am." And so Moses in that moment had a fuller understanding of that power. And for a while they referred to it as the I am. Another story from the New Testament is Paul on the road to Damascus. And Paul was a guy that he was persecuting Christians, big time. And so while he was on the road to Damascus to go persecute some more Christians, probably, all of a sudden a bright light appeared to him. In fact, that light was so bright that it blinded him. And in that moment, actually his name then was Saul. Who are you? What has happened here? And once again, he heard a voice that I am the Lord and that you are going to serve me. And so the story goes, I'm leaving out some details, but he was led, he was blind, and so he had to be led to Damascus. And when he arrived at Damascus, a Christian leader at the time encountered him and restored his sight. And that was considered to be Saul's conversion into Paul. Eckhart Tolle talks about having a very profound experience. A lot of spiritual teachers do. And those stories are really inspiring. And I just want to say that just because you haven't had one of those experiences, it doesn't mean that you've missed the boat. It doesn't mean that there is something yet to happen to you. I believe that divine shows up for us and introduces us to that relationship in a way that is very impactful for the person. Now, some people, they really need burning bushes and booming voices in the sky. Others, and I count myself among those, are met with an experience of peace that I'd never known before. I was into drama, I was into control, I was on the hamster wheel. Got to do more, got to be more, got to be the best. You know what? That is exhausting. And through a series of events, and I've told this story before, but I was introduced to religious science, and I heard a description of God that was the God that I knew was true. Not the God in the previous religious organization that I belonged to. It was all about guilt and blaming and shaming and punishing, and a rule book about that thick, that if you want to be good with God, you got to follow these rules. And so I had an image of God, that judgmental, capricious, sometimes even mean. And definitely you gotta toe the line, or see ya, going to a very warm location, have fun with that. But when I walked into a religious science church, I heard a description of God that I always knew was true. And after going a few times and taking some of the introductory classes, I knew, and I knew that I knew. And that when I engaged in my spiritual practice, that I found a sense of peace that I'd never known before. So everyone's experience of God is different. And there is not one that is more superior than another. If you didn't get a burning bush, it's okay. All that is needed is an experience of a power for good that is greater than you are, and you know it. And when you know that you will never be alone again. So there was a kindergarten teacher. She was observing her class, and she had given them a drawing assignment to draw whatever they wanted to draw. And so she wandered around the class, and she looked around, and there was this one little girl, and she's just focused. She's on a mission. She's in the zone. This is a kindergarten. But she was just, and she said, what are you drawing there? And the little girl looked up and says, I'm drawing God. And the teacher said, but nobody knows what God looks like. And the little kid says, you will in a minute. That picture that she was drawing was the God that was real and alive for her. The only thing that the story doesn't tell is what it looked like. Anybody else wanting to know what that looked like? I did. What did she draw, And if you were to draw a picture of God, what would it be? For me, I got very clear, for me, that it is not even a person, Because some people still see kind of like a personage, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you recognize that it is not something outside of you. For me, I draw God, I draw an ocean. Because that is when I absolutely know that I am one. So when I know that I am one, when I have that experience, then I know that I already have everything I need. That power is infinite source and infinite supply. Now, it's human nature to want to go after the latest and greatest, the next bright, shiny thing. And when we're thinking in those terms, we are putting our good outside of us. We do that in so many ways. When this happens, I'll be happy, and etc. down the line. Truth is, everything you need for happiness and fulfillment exists within you right now. So your mission is to uncover that, to explore it, to realize it. Ernest Holmes says, it is mathematically certain that we cannot contract the infinite. But we can expand the finite. We have to expand the self and attach our ego to the real self, which is God. So we can't reduce God into something that we can completely get our brains around. God is too wonderful and glorious, or the divine or the great spirit, whatever word you choose, is infinite, it is unlimited, and we cannot condense it or distill it into something less. And if you wonder about that, think of some of the faith traditions, denominations, that almost seem like they're defining God in their image. Where do you think the anger and the pettiness and the judgment and the blaming and the shaming? That's not of God. So man has attempted to create God in our image, when the truth is that we have the opportunity to expand beyond a physical body, beyond what we think in our own little minds. That there is a power that we can tap into. And I love the fact that he said, expand the self and attach our ego to the real self. Ernest Holmes always taught that there was a personal ego and a spiritual ego. And it's the personal ego that gets us in trouble. That's the one where we're the center of the universe and we have to control everything and it's all about us. But the spiritual ego is the confidence of knowing that something greater than I am is in my corner, has got my back, will always give me everything I need. And it's not giving, it's already there. The gift is already given. So one of the first steps is to realize that you don't have to go out there to get something that is going to increase your spiritual experience. You don't have to read the latest book. You don't have to go see the new popular speaker. Not to say that those things aren't beneficial, absolutely, but they are not necessary to your experience of the divine, because your experience is going to be unlike anyone else's experience. And your experience comes from mining the depths within you and discovering and uncovering what is already there. So isn't it ironic that even knowing this, there are some of us, not that I would know any of them, that sometimes get it in their small minds that they got to do this alone. That's kind of sad. Because I can absolutely speak for myself and know that when I grab onto something and I think it's mine, and it's mine to control and mine to fix and mine to do, usually I end up either massively frustrated, massively disappointed, and usually dissatisfied with the outcome. However, in my experience, when I encounter something and I realize that I don't have to depend on myself, that I can tap into an infinite resource that is my partner, that is my source, and that I can just turn it over. I don't have to know. I don't have to do. All I really have to do is to be in the space of allowing, to be in a space of receptiveness to grace, and see how my world can unfold more perfectly. And it does when I am in that space. How many of us define ourselves in a limited way? Have you ever noticed you get in a conversation with someone and you ask, what do you do? What's usually the first thing out of their mouth? I'm an engineer. I'm a nurse. I'm a musician. And they immediately go to talking about what they do for a living. You're more than that. We're all more than that. And it took me a while to kind of come up with something that described me that wasn't anything to do about what I do as my vocation. And so when someone asks me, what do you do? I say, I am a student of life. Because I am. I am a student of life. And I am always learning, and I'm always growing. How many of us in this room have a small definition of ourselves? That we limit ourselves in some way? We all do. And we all have the choice and the opportunity to think even bigger. So here's a question for you. What if you didn't believe what you believe about yourself? What if you didn't believe it? It sounds a little bit like The Work. Tommy, help me out. Byron Katie, thank you. When she does The Work, and one of the questions in The Work is, what if this isn't true? And that's a great question to ask yourself when you find yourself giving yourself a bunch of really negative and limiting messages. Or your mini-me mind is trying to tell you all the reasons why you can't do something or you can't have something. What if that wasn't true? Because you know what? It's not. The only thing that gets in the way is our own bloated nothingness, as Emerson would put it, that we can't get out of our own way and just allow Spirit to give the gift. Allow Spirit and the infinite wisdom and the infinite source to guide us. Because we will never, ever go wrong. So what do we believe about life? What is the nature of life? I believe that the universe is about connection, and it's not about chaos. And I find it interesting how much attention has come in the last couple, 3, 4 years about tidying up and decluttering as a way to experience more peace and order and harmony and balance in your life. Not only does that apply to your physical space, but it also applies to what's going on in your mind. Anyone heard the term monkey mind or mind chatter? La 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 la. It's like that character from Peanut. Wah, 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 right? We can still that. We can quiet it down. We can do it through the practice of meditation, which is simply about becoming still. Again, there are dozens of techniques, but ultimately, the right technique for you is the right technique for you. Because the goal is to quiet your mind and your surroundings to the place where you feel peaceful. And when you feel peaceful, when I feel peaceful, I feel connected. I don't feel like I'm struggling anymore. I am allowing, I am being. And when I'm in that place is when I know I'm connected. Or when I'm at the ocean, which is just an amazing place for me. And I know that many people have many places that call to them like that. I knew a fellow minister that the desert did it for him. And I'm like, okay. Guess there's a lot of sand in the desert, I guess. But give me the wide open ocean, because then I am experiencing the vastness and the infinity of life. Oftentimes when I do treatment work, I treat for peace, order, harmony, and balance, because I believe that is the natural state of life. And I think you'll find, I know I have, that if I'm really just out of it, just really feeling out of sync, that nothing's going right for me, that there are two things that generally are going on. Number one is that I'm getting messages and my mind is just going crazy with all these thoughts. Number two, chaos. Number two is I have lost my sense of connectedness to life. Separation is one of the largest causes of suffering. The feeling that you are separate not only from your divine source, but separate from each other. Look in the world right now, all the places where people are wanting to wall things off and make people different and wrong. Whenever we do that, we are creating separation. Joe Hooper says, the one who seeks the indwelling presence is the one who swims in the same ocean and breathes the same air. Total surrender to the greater idea and realization of happiness and harmony. Ernest Holmes says, the more completely we are able to see God in everything, the more completely will the one God in all things respond to us. What that means to me is kind of like our opening song. Take a look at the person next to you. God loves you, I love you too. What if we treated everyone as if they were the divine in manifestation? instead of treating them as other, we treat them as we are swimming in the same ocean. We are all breathing the same air in this room right here and right now. Nobody's breathing different air than anybody else. We're one. We're connected. And the more that we can see that in our own lives, and sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to watch some of the things that are going on in the world and some of the things you see on the news and feel like you are one, that you're connected with this person or this situation or any of it. But the truth is you are. So then rather than projecting the idea of other, we remember that we are connected. Georgia Prescott says, everything that anyone does is either an expression of love or a cry for love, no exception. So what if you see someone behaving very, I want to say the word badly, I'll just say it because that's a human term. Rather than seeing this person as being wrong or whatever, when I see that, I see someone who's crying for love. That they are angry because there's a need in their life that isn't being met. And sometimes that need is the need for a sense of connection to something greater than we are. A sense of connectedness to life. Because truly, if we believe that all things are connected and that what I do to anyone or anything comes back and impacts me, I think that I make different choices. I see things differently. I perceive things differently. But it starts with my recognition of my connection with the divine, with that power for good in the universe that is greater than I am, that is closer than my very breath, always. And again, it doesn't matter what you call that presence. It really doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you know that it's there and that you have a personal experience of it. Because unless it is real to you as a person, then how can you live from the place of connection if you don't believe it, if you don't have an experience of it? A lot of people hear intuition. I believe that intuition is absolutely the universe speaking truth to us. And we all experience intuition differently. Some is like a voice, some is like a real cogent thought, all kinds of things. But you come to the place where you know, and you know what you know, and that's very important. Because when you know, and you know that you know, then you can step forth confidently and lovingly and know that you are never, ever alone. The first part of the global vision says we see a world that works for everyone, and we've been talking about that. And a world that works for everyone has to start with a life that works for me. So that when I'm experiencing that indwelling presence, then my life is working for me, and that becomes a ripple effect out into the world. We see a world that works for everyone, where all life is honored as expressions of the divine. We are all one. Where people live according to spiritual truth. Where we recognize our truth and live from that space. What if we all did that? What if we all lived from choosing from our highest self all the time, or as much as we possibly can, and allow that to grow? Where humanity awakens to its spiritual magnificence And in order for humanity to awaken to their spiritual magnificence, we must awake to our spiritual magnificence first. And that's the truth. And so it is. So please join me